In this video, we're going to be solving polynomial equations by factoring. In our first example, we have 3x to the fourth equals 48x squared. Now, we want to make sure that everything's on the same side of the equation. So we're going to subtract 48x squared from both sides. And that's going to give us a 3x to the fourth minus 48x squared equals 0. Looking at this, we want to know, is there anything that 3x to the fourth has that negative 48x squared also has? And they both have a 3x squared in common. So if we take that out, we're going to be left with an x squared minus 16. So now, as we look at this, we see that our 3x squared is as simplified as it can get, but that our x squared minus 16 can be factored another time. So we're going to factor that again. So we still have our 3x squared. And now when we factor this next piece, we're going to take the difference of squares. And so that is going to give us the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 16 is 4. So we're going to have that 2 times. And because it's the difference of squares, one time we'll have a plus and one time we'll have a minus. And then we can set that equal to 0. And now we see that the 3x squared is simplified, that the x plus 4 is simplified, and that the x minus 4 is simplified. And now we can do the zero product property, which puts our 3x squared equal to 0, our x plus 4 equal to 0, and our x minus 4 equal to 0. So here we'll divide both sides by 3, get x squared equals 0. Then we'll take that square root and get x equals 0. Here we'll have x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 4. And now we want to make sure that we check those solutions and make sure that they work. So we have 3 solutions, so we'll do 3 checks. So we're going to take our original equation, 3x to the fourth equals 48x squared, and we're going to plug in our 0. And when we do that, we see that here we get a 0, and here we get a 0, and those in fact are equal. So one of our answers is x equals 0. Then we're going to plug in our next answer, which was a negative 4. So we'll plug in negative 4. And we're going to get a 768 and a 768. We see that those are equal. So x equals negative 4 is a solution. Then we're going to plug in our last answer of 4. And that's going to give us a solution of 768 and 768. And so we see that is also a solution. So now we're going to try solving a different type of polynomial. Here we have 2x to the third minus 6x squared plus 6x minus 18 equals 0. So here we have 4 terms. So as we go to factor this one, we're going to factor by grouping. So what that means is that we are going to group our pieces. And we're going to take a look, and we want to know, in this first piece, what do those have in common? And we see that they each have a 2x squared that they have in common. So that's going to leave us then with an x minus 3. And then we want to take a look over here and go, gosh, what do those have in common? And those each have a positive 6 in common. And then that's going to leave us with an x minus 3, then equals 0. So then what we want to do is notice here that we have matching pieces. And those matching pieces are going to go and make one piece. We're going to factor those out. So we're going to have x minus 3. And then we have the leftover pieces, which are 2x squared and a plus 6 equals 0. Now notice here that this is simplified. We can't reduce that anymore. But if we look right here, we can actually take a 2 out of that. So we're going to take a 2 out. So we're going to take a 2 out of that piece. So we're still going to have our x minus 3, but we're going to take a 2 out of our 2x squared plus 6, and that's going to leave us with x squared plus 3 equals 0. So now we can use our zero product property and take each of those pieces and set them equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0, 2 equals 0, and x squared plus 3 equals 0. And then we can solve, and we get x equals 3. And as we look at this, we know that 2 does not equal 0, so that's not going to be an answer. And then to solve for this next piece, we'll subtract 3 from both sides, and then we'll take the square root, and here we'll get x equals a plus or minus an I radical 3. And now we just need to check our solutions. So we'll scoot this over where we have a little bit more room. So we'll check our first answer, where we'll have 2 times 3 quantity cubed minus 6 times 3 quantity squared plus 6 times 3 minus 18. And we want to know, does that equal 0? So if we plug that into the calculator, we're going to see that this right here equals 0, which confirms that x equals 3 is a solution. Checking our imaginary answers can be a little bit more challenging, but still doable. So here I'll have 2 times, and we'll go ahead and we'll do our positive I radical 3 first, and we're going to cube that, minus 6 times I radical cubed, or radical 3, sorry, squared, plus 6 times I radical 3 minus 18 equals 0. So we'll begin by distributing our radical 3. And so that's going to give 2 times I to the third times the radical 3 to the third, which is going to be 2 times negative 1 times I times 3 times the square root of 3. So that's what all of this turned into, okay? So we get negative 6 I radical 3. Then we'll distribute our square. And that's going to give us a negative 6I squared radical 3 squared, which then turns into a negative 6 times negative 1 times 3, which is a positive 18. So positive 18. And so that's what this all came from. Then we're going to have plus 6I radical 3 minus 18 equals 0. And so when we take a look at this part right here, we see that that equals a 0, which confirms that our positive will also work. And then if we do it with the negative, and we were to plug that in, the only thing that would change is that out front here, this would turn into a positive, and this would turn into a negative. And other than that, everything else would work the same. And so we have that x equals plus or minus I radical 3 is also a solution.